Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Now, at the Battle of Geonosis, the Republic was caught off guard by the appearance of the Separatist Alliance droid army. At roughly the same time, the Jedi revealed the existence of a secret massive army of clones. A clash was destined to happen between these two newly discovered military forces, but one key element had to be in place for that to happen. A Republic fleet that could transport around 200,000 clones to Geonosis. Now, at the time, the Venator class Star Destroyer program hadn't even begun production. At the same time, the Republic hadn't had a federal fleet or military force in more than 1,000 years. Luckily, the Kaminoans contacted one of Quad Drive Yard's more secretive subsidiary companies, Rothana Heavy Engineering, and commissioned them to make a fleet of transport ships that would roll out with the clones on day one. That transport we're talking about, of course, is the Acclamator Class Assault Ship. Although its role in the GAR was less glamorous than the various Star Destroyers and Starfighters also employed by the GAR Navy, the Acclamator Class Assault Ships would prove to be one of the most important vessels throughout the entire Clone Wars. It was not only an extremely functional ship, the Acclamator Class Assault Ship was also class-leading in a lot of its design features, which is why it was one of the most underrated ships the galaxy had ever seen. Today we go through 10 reasons why. The opening salvo of the Clone Wars was fired by the Republic after they invaded Geonosis and targeted the droid foundries on the planet. Although the JR was the aggressors in this battle, they were completely outnumbered by the Confederacy of Independent Systems. While the clones were successful at defeating the Separatist droid army on the ground that day, they also allowed millions of droids to escape the system in Lucrehulk battleships in orbit. These droid forces split into smaller battle groups and began to systematically take over worlds in the Outer Rim, overthrowing whatever token local defense forces that were located there. Some of these worlds openly welcomed the Separatist Alliance with open arms, others tried to resist. Either way, it was a disaster for the Republic and highlighted their inability to protect and control their outermost client states. Drastic action and response needed to be taken by the Republic Navy to ensure stability in the Outer Rim territories. The only ship that was really capable of transporting large amounts of clone troopers and war material to the front was the Acclamator Class Assault Ship. The fully loaded Acclamator class could carry up to 16,000 clones along with 320 speeder bikes, 48 all-terrain tactical enforcers, 36 self-propelled heavy artillery, along with 80 low-altitude assault transports, which were hung overhead on suspended rails in the hangar to save space. That amounts to an entire division of infantry soldiers along with all of their supporting vehicles and equipment. This meant that one Acclamator class assault ship had enough war material on board to significantly tip the scales in an Outer Rim system that was under conflict. The Acclamator wasn't just a transport that shipped people off to battle. After the Pyrrhic victory at Geonosis, the clones who survived reboarded their Acclamator transport, and it would be their home for the foreseeable future. Although some clone units occasionally rotated back to Kamino, Coruscant, or other core worlds for some R&R, these lab-created soldiers weren't citizens of the Republic and therefore were not given the same rights as citizens and given limited time off the battlefield. This, of course, was also due to the numeric advantage that the Separatist Alliance had over the Republic. These clone troopers were basically being rushed from one battlefield to another. But whatever was the case, the Acclamator class assault ship soon became the home to thousands and thousands of clone troopers. It was the only stable place where they could get shelter time and time again after battles. The upper decks of the Acclamator were devoted mainly to crew and barracks quarters, and the bridge communication room could serve as an ad hoc command center during battles. The massive hangar bay also featured repair facilities and could keep the ship's complement of vehicles operating and running. And so the Acclamator was far more than just a military transport, it was also a mobile base as well. In the stern of the Acclamator class assault ship was another surprise, a pair of massive 200-meter-long Class 0.6 hyperdrives. This meant that this particular transport ship actually had the fastest production hyperdrives available for its size of ship. Faster than even the Venator class Star Destroyer and faster than all the hyperdrives equipped on snub fighters fielded by the Republic Navy. Generally speaking, in most naval convoys, the warships and frigates and other escort vessels are going to be a lot faster than the vessels they're escorting. In the recent film Greyhound, which I highly recommend, Tom Hanks plays a U.S. Navy commander in charge of an Allied convoy during World War II. His job is to make a dreaded Atlantic crossing through German U-boat infested waters. The destroyers and frigates beneath his command are much faster than the slower troop ships and civilian liners that make up his convoy, and so the faster ships are forced to slow down and accommodate the slower vessels, extending the amount of time the crossing takes and exposing the convoy to more potential danger. Having a transport that not only could keep up with the rest of your fleet, but also was faster than the rest of your fleet, meant that there were a lot of options to keep that troop-laden ship a lot safer and out of the reach of enemy forces. It also made your entire fleet a lot more flexible and mobile. But at the same time, the Acclamator Class Assault Ship didn't necessarily need an escort all the time. Sometimes its escorts were too slow and a planet needed help immediately. So the Acclamator Class Assault Ship, notice the assault part of the name, had the ability to go into battlefields all by itself. Assault ships like the Acclamator generally were geared towards combat situations and capable of taking incoming fire and also dishing out some punishment on its own. Well, it's always a good idea to support larger ships with picket vessels and a starfighter screen. During the Battle of Geonosis, about a dozen Acclamator Class Assault ships with limited fighter coverage was basically able to carry out the entire operation all by themselves. Not a single one of these transports were shot down on their way to the surface of the planet, which just shows you how robust this system is. Along with heavy shielding and armor, the Acclamator also had 4 large missile and torpedo launching tubes, 24-point defense laser cannons, and 12 quad turbo laser turrets. This wasn't necessarily enough firepower and defense to make the Acclamator a ship of the line, but it could exchange broadsides with enemy capital ships and defend against enemy starfighters if needed. In vacuum, most Star Wars ships are rated by how fast their acceleration rate. In an atmosphere, however, because there is air resistance, we measure these ships by their kilometers per hour or miles per hour speed. The Acclamator is actually designed specifically for flying in atmosphere and has a maximum speed of around 1,200 kilometers an hour, which is actually very impressive. In comparison, the ARC 170 Starfighter and the Droid Tri-Fighter both had a maximum in-atmosphere speed of just 10,050 kilometers per hour. The faster maximum speed achieved by the Acclamator is probably due to its more aerodynamic design and powerful engines. This gives this ship another huge advantage during the landing phase of its mission. Most larger transport ships like the Acclamator Class Assault Ship need some type of ferry vessel to take troops, ammunitions, and vehicles from it down to the surface of the planet it's invading. The Confederacy of Independent Systems had to rely on the Lucrehulk battleship to transport droids, and that required dropships as an intermediary to bring troops to the surface. For rapid stealth insertion, or when facing a contested landing zone, sometimes the Acclamator Class Assault Ship would launch its complement of LAATs first to clear the entire landing area. But unlike other ships in its class, this 752-meter-long behemoth was capable of actually entering atmosphere, landing, and then taking off all at once. This again speaks to the impressive amount of power that the Acclamator central reactors could generate, whether it's powering the thrusters and repulsor lifts, or the hyperdrive, or all of the living quarters for the clones, or the various weapons systems on board. The Acclamator class Star Destroyer could basically do it all. On top of its very impressive landing abilities, the Acclamator had a gigantic assault ramp that was purpose-built for disembarking all of its troops and materials on board in record time. If you take a look at the scene right here, roughly 1,000 troopers are on the assault ramp at one time, which means you could probably offload the entire ship within minutes rather than hours. The massive hangar directly inside of this ramp area also is a great place to stage your military forces so that your landing operation can go off without any significant problems or bottlenecks. Now, once this assault ship has disembarked all of its troops and war materials, it can actually return back to orbit and provide artillery support. Thanks to its 12 quad-turbo lasers, the Acclamator can do a decent job at orbital bombardment and support a ground forces campaign with a huge amount of firepower. They can also carry out what's known as Base Delta Zero, which essentially is wiping out all life on the surface of a planet. This was something that was in the Galactic Republic's playbook as well as the Galactic Empire later on. There's a reason why General Hera Syndulla chose an Acclamator Class Assault Ship when she was in command of her own task force in the New Republic. You see, the Acclamator Class Assault Ship was extremely easy to modify because of its open design. In Hera Syndulla's ship, the Lodestar was modified to carry several wings of starfighters along with rebel troopers. Meanwhile, the Empire also found a good use for the Acclamator's large store space. They basically used it to ferry around slaves to its various penal colonies. Civilian enterprises also saw old Acclamator Class starships as a perfect vessel for hauling freight, with the option of having passengers in the upper deck. Generally, ships as specialized as the Acclamator should have limitations in other areas. But the designers of the ship spared no expense when drawing up the plans. The Acclamator Class Assault Ship was designed to engage enemy blockades by itself, break through them, and deliver a division worth of troops without support under heavy fire. Then, it would return back to orbit for further support. This was one of the most complete and versatile ship designs the Galactic Republic had seen since the ancient Jedi-Sith Wars. So there you have it, guys. Those are 10 reasons why I believe this is one of the most underrated ships during the Clone Wars period. Let me know in the comment section below if I've missed any other features that you think makes this ship so awesome. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.